So I don't know about you, but I've really gotten used to a GPS, like constant confirmation. Yes, right up here, it's 1 mile away, you're going to take an exit, okay, over here you're going to turn right, and then, it gives you these constant feedbacks and reminders, okay, you're on the right track, yes, and you even have a little time counter, it counts down backwards, like, okay, how much time is left, okay. And so this morning I was driving here, and I didn't have my GPS. I just had my ordinary directions just written down because it's really easy. It's like you just take like one exit, take like 2 turns, right? So I was noticing that as I was driving on the freeway, I was like trying to remember. Now, how far down is Madre Street? I think it's coming up still. Wait, I was kind of phased out a little bit ago. I didn't pass it already, did I? And then I was just noticing, like, how I was just, like, replaying in my mind, like, oh, man, like, I was starting to get worried, like, maybe I missed it, like, maybe I'm off track, and it's like, okay, well, eventually, I just kept driving, and there it was. I didn't miss it. It was all fine. But it was so interesting how the reality was there. The 210 it never changed the whole time. I was wondering in my mind, I was like, I wonder if it's coming up, if I already missed it. The 210 didn't change. The freeway structure has remained. In fact, it will remain, it was there before me, it remains after me, okay? And so my knowledge of that, or my lack of knowledge of that, makes no difference. It has no relevance on, the objective reality of the situation. And so I was realizing, even in my midst of like, oh man, I'm wondering now, how far, I'm like calculating, like how many minutes should it take, how long did Google Maps say it was going to take to get there, And so all this calculating I'm doing, I'm just reflecting to myself and I'm saying, isn't this so funny? Because, all of this calculating I'm doing, it just doesn't change anything. It's like, if I just continue on this freeway, I'm going to find my exit, it's going to be there, and then I'm going to take it, right? And so, isn't it just funny how if we are living life with God, how it can be similar?
Yeah.
It can be similar. We're so used to constant feedback, like, oh yes, you're on the right track, like this is going well, yes, you only have, 5 more, months to do this, and then after that, then you have this lined up, and, it's all certain, it's all laid out, and you know full well what's happening, and you feel all good. You feel secure, you feel safe, you feel happy. But what about when you don't have that constant feedback? And you're just like, oh, I'm coasting, I'm going down the freeway, and I don't know where my exit is. I know it's coming, I think. Wait, is it? And then you start to wonder, wait a second, maybe I'm on the wrong freeway. I don't know what's happening. And you can become disoriented. Well, this is something that I think is very interesting today, talking about destiny and covenant, because one thing that God is very good at, that we aren't very good at, is being faithful to His promises.
There you go.
God started the whole world, the whole universe, with His spoken word, which we know that when His word is spoken, it doesn't come back void. It goes out, it's firmly established in the heavens. So God starts everything with a covenant, with a promise. And He says, this is how I have set things out. And He makes it known to everyone, to all of us. It gives us security. It helps us to know what kind of a world are we living in. What is going to happen if I do this? What's going to happen if I do that? And so God makes it clear right up front. He says, this is how the world is. If you do this, this happens. If you do this, this happens. If you want to get on track with your life, do this, and you'll be on track. It's very simple, actually. And we have this idea that God is like this upset. It's like He's just angry at us. It's like, why is this happening in my life? And it's like, well, actually, God just, He already told you, He warned you that if you go off over here in the thorn bushes, you're going to get pricked with thorns. So that's why I told you to stay over here in the lawn and not to go over there in the bushes, right? And it's very straightforward in one sense, but when you live this out in real life, it's not so easy all the time. Okay, so did you know that there are lots of covenants God has made? God's made a lot of covenants. Pastor Ruth talked about some of them. She talked about the covenant that God made with Abraham. God said that he would never again flood the whole earth to destroy it. Did you know that there's a scripture that says that God made a covenant with the sun and the moon, that the sun and the moon would continue in their orbits? I didn't even really notice that until I did my research for this talk. I was like, oh, he made a covenant with the sun and the moon. Oh, okay. God made a covenant with David. He said that there will be a ruler that will come from your line and that your throne will be established forever. And we know that that is having its full fulfillment in Jesus Christ. We know that there's a time when there's going to be a covenant of peace, that God will be the shepherd of his people Israel, and that there will be a time when they aren't ravaged by the wolves, that they're in, think of Psalm 23, like they'll be by the still waters and on the, green pastures, and that they'll be completely provided for, that they'll have a good shepherd over them. So there are lots of covenants, but what is a covenant? I think that sometimes we, on the practical side of this, we can get a little bit confused because we have this feeling, okay, covenant, maybe that's kind of like a contract, agreement, like maybe if I don't really live up to my side, then, God doesn't really live up to his side. Like, if I kind of go off on this, then, God won't really do that. And, maybe if I go off over here, then God's just upset at me and then, I'm just done, game over. Well, there is something that's insightful about that, which is that in the covenant of the law, which is another covenant, that God set up with Moses at Mount Sinai, he said, if you don't follow me, all of these curses will follow you. But if you follow this law, then all these blessings will follow you, okay? And this is the covenant that you see in the New Testament is actually fading away. Just there's in I think Hebrews it says that that Moses had a veil when he came down to hide the glory because he was encountering God, but then he was representing the covenant of the law, which was also passing away because it was imperfect. Which imperfect does not mean that God made a mistake. It means that actually you can see in the Old Testament, it's very interesting that God says, this covenant isn't working because the people can't actually keep the law. And so I'm going to make a better covenant where they don't have to keep the law in order to get these blessings. I'm actually going to put the law into their heart so that they can actually live out the desire that I have for them. The very thing that God decreed upon creation, which was that these people are created in my image. And how do people get in God's image except by being in that covenant relationship with him, being bound to him? I'm married. My husband, he's a philosophy professor, and he and I love to talk. And, we sometimes we'll notice that we pick up phrases that each other say, and we would tend to pick up vocabulary from each other. So my sister-in-law said one time, she's like, "You guys are saying the word propagate so much. Propagate." It's like, and so then I said something. It's like how something propagates something, and she's like, "There you go. You said it again." And there's something about when you are in a covenant relationship with someone, you gradually are wound together, you're bound together with them, and you become more and more like them. And isn't this exactly what God wanted from the beginning? He wanted people to be bound together with him, right? And so this is what actually, through the covenant of grace that comes with Jesus, right? He gives the fulfillment of his prophecy in Isaiah, where he says that covenant is going to be fulfilled in Jesus, because Jesus is the one who is going to empowered, like when Jesus says, I'm going to ascend so that the Spirit can come. And the Spirit's going to guide you into all truth. The Spirit's going to teach you the secrets of God, right? And so that Spirit is putting into your heart the law of God so that you can be like Him. We are going to be conformed into the image of Christ, right? So this is how actually we live out covenant. And it's when we live out this covenant of being bound together with God. This is when our true destiny as believers in Christ, living out the kingdom of heaven on the earth, this is how our destiny is unlocked, is when we're in that covenant relationship. And so this is the thing that's very interesting. We just have this idea it's just not fair. Some people don't know about God. Like, how could it be that God would punish them if they are, just going off in their own ways? They don't know. Like, they just have their own beliefs. And it's very interesting when I look at, if you look at 2 Kings 17, you can see God actually has a lot of things that He says with His relationship with Israel. Some of them are, positive, like, I love you, I'm going to save you. But some of them are negative, like, I am angry with you, and you're rebelling, right? And so God sort of has this love-hate relationship with Israel, but God loves Israel until the end. In 2 Kings 17, again, we're talking about Israel here. I think that there's something very interesting here that I want to point out. I'm going to start at verse 14. But they, Israel, would not listen and were as stiff-necked as their fathers, who did not trust in the Lord their God. They rejected His decrees and the covenant He had made with their fathers and the warnings He had given them. They followed worthless idols and themselves became worthless. They imitated the nations around them, although the Lord had ordered them. Do not do as they do, and they did the things that the Lord had forbidden them to do. The thing that stuck out to me here, they followed worthless idols, and themselves became worthless. This, for some reason, this just stuck out to me as like, whoa, wait a second, hold on, let's step back just for a second. When I make a covenant, when I make a commitment, I set my allegiance, I set my loyalty, I have responsibilities, I'm bound to something. That thing is now part of me. Okay, so if I make a covenant, I make a covenant with something, anyway, with a person. This is why God tells Israel, it's like, don't make a covenant with the people that are right next to you. Well, why? Is it because God's a racist? No. Okay? If you know who the neighbors are next to Israel, they are sacrificing their children, like murdering them on altars. They are going around like destroying things, wreaking havoc, doing detestable things, okay? Like, these are people you do not want to make a covenant with, okay? So God's saying, don't make a covenant with them. Why? Because He knows when you make a covenant with something, that becomes connected into you. You're bound together with it. You're twisted into it, okay? So, okay. If you are bound together with worthless idols, what does that do to you?
Makes you worthless.
It destroys you. You were meant to be made in the image of God, which means you're meant to carry His presence, His holiness, His righteousness, His goodness, His power, His love, all of the virtues, all of the goodness that comes out from God. You're meant to carry that. When you are bound together with a worthless idol, something made out of wood, like Pastor Bruce pointed out, it's like when you're bound together with demonic spirits saying, I am the, hero who's going to save you. Well, they have their own motives. And when you're bound to them, all of a sudden, that is bound into you. And what happens when you're bound into that sort of a system? You become a slave. You become worthless. You're not your, powerful kingdom of royalty, a kingdom of kings and priests, like God wanted Israel to be. He said, I want you to be my kings and my priests. I want you to serve me. I want you to be a blessing to the nations. It's very interesting when I think about the whole story of God throughout history. You see that God makes promises. He doesn't only make promises to people, he makes promises to himself. This is how I run things, this is how I do things. And when we want to cooperate with God, we get into those blessings that naturally pour out from it. It's like almost like a natural law that God built into all creation. He says, when there's all of creation built, it's all good. The natural way that things should go is when you are aligned with God, naturally the blessings of God follow. But there are these things that get in the way in the fallen world, some of them being mischievous things that want to pull you away from God. And that would mostly be in the form of demonic spirits, in the devil, basically. And we know that from looking at various scripture passages, and even if you want to look into something like the book of Enoch, which some branches of Christianity would consider portions of that to be canonical, you can see that there's a whole story of these angelic beings who are in union, in covenant, in connection with God, and that they rebel against it, they reject, they turn away. And this is the most evil thing they can do, because we know that Paul says, he says that we see in part, like through a mirror, it's like a fog. And but when you are in the presence of God in heaven as an angelic being, and you see God up front and personal, there's like so much more revelation that you have compared to what a human being has on earth. And then consider rebelling against God in that circumstance. It's so, unimaginably more tragic, right? And so when you have these beings that rebel against God, and then they come to the earth and they have their own, purposes and their own things that they want to do, basically, whenever God has his purposes and is saying to people, you can be my representatives, I'm going to bless you, those demonic spirits don't want to see that happen. And they want to get you away from those promises of God. So, what can they do? Well, there's actually not a whole lot that they can do. First of all, they have to get permission from God for everything that they do. And then second of all, even when they do have permission, there's just so many ways that God protects you from those things that it's just so hard. But the most effective way that they can get you away from God is to get you away from God by you thinking, in your thinking, that you're away from God. This is why it's so important to know your identity. Who are you? I was just talking with Mary before the conference, and I was reflecting because this has been sort of a hard season for me, just in particular because I have felt that there have been so many promises spoken over my life, so many things. I tend to be a very optimistic person, so I would just have all of these goals and all these things. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I would tend to also just have this sort of, I guess, naive optimism in me, where it's oh, okay, I'll do this and this and this, and not even really consider that anything could, go against that. And so I have just felt like it's not just been, a few months or even a year or even 2 years. It's just been years of me feeling like not only have I been feeling like I haven't been stepping into those things that I feel like have been promised to me, but I feel like I've almost been going opposite directions. Like, I feel like I've come in and I originally found a community and I was kind of getting connected, but then I felt like, okay, actually, like I just had this, like I just had to cut that out, like, so it just got cut off. And then I feel like, okay, like now I'm just back at, square negative 2. Like I just went back, like negative. And so then I feel like, okay, well I'm just disconnected from community, so at least I can, do this. And so I start to work on a business, and I start to work on some things, and it's like, well, basically then, after I start working on some things, then it's like, okay, no, actually I'm just going to cut those off too, those are just off. And so then I feel like I just back, and so then I'm just like, well, now I have all this optimism. Yes, these things are going to happen. Like, this is going to be awesome. And it's just been going opposite. And so, in that moment, well, I would say probably about almost a year ago, not quite a year ago, I discovered some people who were very interesting, and they were talking about all sorts of things that I would be very interested in talking about. I love to talk about theology and spiritual gifts and all these things, and they were very, very interesting people. And so over the course of talking with them and forming a friendship, especially with the wife, there was just more and more this feeling that I had of like just inside my heart, like I was starting to get worried, and let me tell you why. I was worried because I was hearing these things in my spirit, these things like, you are missing it, you're missing it. You should have already, come into your purposes by now. Okay, now here's a chance you can get into your purposes. You just have to, do this, and then, maybe this will work, but you better hurry up, make a decision, jump right now, because this is a limited time offer, and, if you don't jump on it, you're just gonna miss out, your life is gonna tank, this is gonna be horrible, okay? And so, I don't necessarily need to go into all the details, but basically what happened was, at the very end, it got so severe, like, okay, you are gonna reach, okay, here was the offer presented to me. You're gonna be like this awesome, amazing person, only if you leave your husband and come join us and do these things, okay? Now, for me, this was, the point when I was realizing, okay, there's something wrong with this, okay? Okay, first of all, marriage is a covenant before the Lord, okay? God will never ask you to break a covenant, okay? Amen. God will never ask you to break a covenant. However, I was so confused because everything they were saying sounded so convincing. It's like, yes, we want to transform the world. Yes, we want to end abortion. Yes, we want to, all these really good, amazing things. Yes, we want to hear from the Holy Spirit. We want to, get these new, ideas from heaven, and we want to do this, and we want to do this. And it sounded so good and so appealing. And it was like, yes, like you are going to be in with us in this inner circle, and we're going to be a powerhouse of influencers, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And I was just like, yeah, like that's what I want to do. Like that's what I've always wanted to do, right? And it's like, okay, this offer came, but there was strings attached. There were strings attached that I couldn't understand. I couldn't discern. Where are these strings coming from? And so eventually I started to realize, okay, here are some of the strings. When I felt like the Lord, when I shared something that I felt like the Lord told to me, they were like telling me, oh, well, basically like saying, you didn't really hear from the Lord. Like, we hear from the Lord, and we're going to, tell you what the Lord actually said. And so then all of a sudden now I am subtly being drawn away from my personal relationship with God. Like, this is who I know He is. This is how I am thriving, I'm bound to God, into, oh, now I have to be bound to you. Like, you are the one who tells me what is right and what is wrong and what I should do next and everything. And I had such a hard time with this because there was something that got into me, into my heart, in that season when I was doubting. I didn't know. I was in a vulnerable state. I didn't know. What is my purpose? Is God really there for me? Is he, like, all these dreams that he's spoken to me and things that he's put into my heart, are they really going to come to pass? Like, when? When are they going to come to pass? I don't know. I don't know if they are. Maybe I'm missing it. Maybe this is my chance. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. How do I know if this is what I'm supposed to do? I don't know. And so in this state, I am, like, literally, like, burning things through my mind, like, staying up in the night because I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then finally, when it comes to the point where they're like, you know what, your husband, he just is not picking up on what we're saying. He's just out of the loop. Like, but you are. Like, we know that you're understanding us, so you've got to, like, basically pick up and move and come with us. And so I realized, okay, that's it. That's it. And I met these people. Okay, I can tell you, I met these people actually at church. At the church that most of these people attend. Okay? Okay. And so I'm telling you, this is not like, oh, okay, like, this is just, you know, some crazy person somewhere, you know, some cult singing Kumbaya in the forest. No, like, these are actually people, like, in your church, somewhere here. Like, there are, and I would say, those people are under as much bondage as that they were trying to get me into. They weren't trying. In fact, they didn't know anything different. They weren't trying to get me into bondage of anything, but they were just under so much bondage that they couldn't see it, that's all that they knew. And so then I said, okay, that's it. I know, that's it. I can't go on with that. And so then I, you know, have my little recharging session and, like, recovering, and I'm like, okay, like, I know that wasn't from God, okay, I know, but now what? Now it's just this big vacuum, okay? I thought God gave me these promises, and then I'm thinking, maybe I missed it. Maybe I was supposed to do something like that. Maybe it wasn't quite that. Maybe it was something else. I don't know. And so, and then it's just like the internal turmoil comes again and again and again and again. And I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing? What am I supposed to be doing? I can really relate with Abraham when he's like conspiring with Sarah. Well, maybe you should go, you know, on Hagar, you know. And it's like, I don't know, like, maybe you missed it, you know. And it's like I can really feel that, because you don't always have your GPS in life constantly giving you affirmation. Yes, you're doing it right. Yes, you're on the right track. Yes, you're doing it right. This is, you know, 5 more months of this, and then this will happen, and then things will take off. Okay? We don't have that. So, I have been realizing that I would, you know, have these moments of inspiration. I would say, yes, like, you know, God spoke these things, and, you know, I'm going to be, you know, X, Y, Z, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and it's because, like, God has called me to these things. He's called me to a great ministry. He wants to influence the world, and he wants to bring healing into these parts of the world, and he wants to do it through me, because he's equipped me to do these things, carry these things, right? And so I have these moments where I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And then another few months, and nothing. And I'm like, what's happening? And so then it's all over again. Rewind. Okay. So what do you do? Joseph was given a dream when he was a child, basically, saying, the sun and the moon and the stars are going to bow down before you, okay? I'm really into dreams, so I really take dreams seriously. And I've had a lot of dreams that are, like, basically, like, you know, giving me these grand pictures of, like, what's going to happen, you know. And so I feel like, yeah, okay, yes. So Joseph was very inspired by this dream. He shared it with his brothers, with his family. And what happens? Did he just get into his dream? Oh, yes, it just all came to pass, yes. It's like, no, he got thrown into a pit and was sold into slavery. prospering, like that's not really that great of news, okay? But anyway, so he ends up in the house of one of Pharaoh's officials, Potiphar. And he's put in charge of everything in Potiphar's household. It's almost like he has like a really large estate or like lots of responsibility. And so he's giving Joseph like sort of like the managerial position over all of these assets that he has, okay? And so Potiphar has a wife, takes notice of him because Joseph is kind of handsome, and she comes up and says, "Come to bed with me."
Oh my God.
Okay? And so Joseph replies and he says, look, your husband has given me charge over everything. He hasn't had anything from me except for you because he's married to you. You're his wife. How could I do something so evil and wicked against him? That doesn't deter her. She just keeps prodding him and prodding him, we're told in the scriptures. And you know what? I woke up from a dream one night. I felt like God gave me this extra little insight. Now, this is, Rachel's adding commentary. You won't necessarily find this in the scripture, but I felt like God just gave me a little picture into maybe something that was going on a little deeper than this. So, think of who Potiphar was. Who was Potiphar? Potiphar was one of Pharaoh's officials. So, Potiphar is within an arm's reach of Pharaoh's authority. He's within an arm's reach. He's very close. He's very, very close to Pharaoh. Joseph was in charge of all of Potiphar's household. In a sense, Joseph is within an arm's reach of Pharaoh. What if Potiphar's wife didn't just say, "Come to bed with me"? What if she said, I think you actually could be a better official for Pharaoh than Potiphar. I think that you actually are more skilled than him. You deserve it. I think that I have connections. I could get you in. All you have to do is come to bed with me. So I just had this little thought of possibly what the situation was. Take it or leave it. Had the feeling that this was a specifically designed test from God, designed for evil, designed to get Joseph off track, to take an exit early on the freeway, and to be satisfied with taking that exit early rather than actually reaching the destination that God had for him. Designed, crafted by the enemy, but used for good from God. Because we know that God wants us to have a sturdy connection with Him, to have that strong character, to be robust and resilient, so that when He brings us into those places that He has for us, that we won't be easily knocked down, that we won't be easily led astray, that we won't be easily deceived. Because how terrible is it if it's like Solomon, who is blessed with so much wisdom and so much riches and so much, and then at the end of his life turns away from God, and it's like, like how tragic. It's like God does everything that He can to protect us from that. Okay, so God lets this test come to Joseph. Oh, Joseph, I bet you could become, you deserve to be one of Pharaoh's officials. I know you do. I can see it in you. I can see it. Everybody else doesn't see it, but I see it. I see it in you. I see that you could be one of the most important people in the land, and I can get you in, you and I, best buds, and I feel like Joseph, what did he do? He so honored and revered his covenant with God that he would not allow himself to take the exit early to get that security. Yes, that's right. I do deserve that. I've known it all along. I had that dream. I knew that I was going to, be in this position of influence. I knew it. I knew that maybe this is how I can get that promise. But he would not forsake his covenant with God. And he said, no, I am going to keep my covenant with God. I'm bound with God. I'm not letting you be in control of my destiny, Potiphar's wife, even though you might have connections to get me in somewhere. No, I'm staying connected with God, staying connected with that covenant with God. He ran out of the house. And because of that, what happened? He just had a victory celebration and everyone comes over for ice cream. No. He is thrown in prison because someone falsely, Potiphar's wife, accuses him of basically, trying to rape her or whatever. And so not only does he not get to be one of Potiphar's officials, he's thrown into prison, which is the opposite direction. He was within arm's reach, and then he's cast down to the lowest of the low. But because he honored his covenant with God, God is the one who made the promise, and God is the one who lifted him up. And how quickly was he lifted up? Well, how long was he in prison? He was there for months, years. How long? Probably years. He was in prison. 13 years he was in prison. Thank you, Pastor Ruth. 13 years he was in prison. And all of a sudden, quickly, 24-hour turnaround, he was the second most powerful person in Egypt. How does this happen? It doesn't happen because we try to make our way and try to pull it and just take any route that we can. It's because we have a covenant relationship with God. Yes. And God is the one who gives blessings, and God is the one who gives the promises, and God is the one who preserves and protects you, and God is the one who has plans for you, and God is the one who has put those things into your heart, and He's the one who wants it more than you do. Yes. He's planning and strategizing. He's saying, how can I get them into that position? I really want to. If you were thinking, like I have struggled, I value dreams a lot, and so I went through a season where I had these dreams, recurring dreams, that I was at a buffet, and they were closing the buffet, so I was trying to quickly grab food because the buffet was closing, or that I grabbed my food from the buffet, but somebody threw it away while I went out, and then I just was out, I lost out, or that there were, there was an airplane about to leave the airport, and I was just running late, and I was missing it, and I was like, no, stop, I'm coming, is there any way you can delay? And it's like, there's just this feeling like I'm missing it, I'm gonna miss it. And so I was having these recurring dreams, I'm missing it. And I say, no, stop. Is this dependent on me, or is this dependent on God? Is this the promise of God, or is this the promise of me? Is it on me, or is it on God? And I say, if we do our part, if we align ourselves with God, if we get in covenant with God, then that's when the blessings flow, and that's when your destiny is unlocked. That's when your destiny unfolds, and that's when you are coming into your highest purposes, is when you're connected with God. How do you do that when every day you're like, I don't know what's happening, I don't know where things are going, I don't know, I don't see this happening. When I was telling my husband, 2 days ago, I was crying, I'm a girl, I cried. I actually haven't cried for a while, but I cried. I was just saying, look, there's all these things, all these promises. Many of them are years old by now, okay? Years and years old. And I have these feelings, I have this deep feeling like there's something that God has put in me, and I feel like there's something there, and I just don't see it. I don't see it happening, I don't see it coming out. I see that I start something, and it's just shrinking, and I see that I'm doing something, and it's just not taking off, and I see that I'm going here, and I'm going here, and I'm going here, and I'm just, okay, God, I just want to do what you want me to do, and I don't know if I even hear Him or understand what He wants me to do, and I'm just trying to go off of what the last thing was that I thought He said, and I just feel like I'm just caught up in a spiral, and I was just crying and saying, look, I'm supposed to be mature, and I'm supposed to just say, yes, God, I have faith. Yes, I believe in you. Yes, it's going to happen. Yes, I believe that you're the one who brings this about. But I don't want to have faith. I just want to cry. I just want to say, I don't know. I want somebody else to do this for me. Elijah do in the desert? He said to God, I'm the only prophet here in the land. You abandoned me. I'm the only one in all of Israel. I'm the only one. And what did God say? He said, no, you're not the only one. There's 7,000 other prophets. How are we going to know this? How are we going to know this? Well, this is why it's so important to find other covenant people. Other covenant people. Other covenant people. These are not anybody. These are not anybody. These are people who are in covenant relationship with God. They are loyal to God. They're not going to give up on God. They're not going to say, okay, well, this is, I think, the way that I can get a promotion if I do this, and I'm going to do that because that's what I see. No. There are people who are connected to God, and they say, it doesn't matter what it costs. I'm connected to God. I'm connected to God. And those are the people they need to find. You need to find those people. And when you are weak and you say, I can't do it. I want to trust in God. I want to be mature, but I just can't. I don't know how. That's when they come. And what does Paul say to the church? He says, what is the job? What is the purpose of getting together? It is to encourage. Encourage. I know that you are coming into your purposes. I know you're coming into your purposes. I know God loves you. I know God loves you. I know you're coming into your purposes. I know God has a plan for you. I know God has a plan for you. I know you're coming into life. You're coming into new life. You're coming into new life. It's like that is our purpose as a covenant people, as a covenant community. We are meant to encourage one another. God, we can encourage ourselves in the Lord. Yes. We are meant to encourage each other in the Lord too. Okay? This is not a solo game. This is a whole body. This is a whole body. When you are stranded alone by yourself in the desert, yes, you can follow God, but you're probably going to be a little bit psychotic, like Elijah is saying, I'm the only one. I'm the only one. Okay? He had his issues. Okay? If you are with people, they will sharpen you like iron. They will cut off those things that aren't from God. They're going to strengthen your faith. They're going to help you step into those things that you were made for. And so, all right, I'm all fired up now. How do I find my community? All right. Actually, so this is something I don't know. I don't know how to answer this. I don't know how to answer how do you find your community? How do you find covenant people? Well, you find people, you talk with them, you be real. Are they covenant people? You can tell pretty quickly. Are they going to encourage you? Are they going to be there for you? I mean, people are going to not be as faithful as God, yes. Okay? You can also determine in your own heart, I'm going to be a covenant person. That means I love you and I support you. Even if you hurt me, I love you and support you. Even if I don't agree with your theology, I love you and I support you. Even if I think that you didn't treat so-and-so very nicely, or if I thought that you were a little bit hypocritical from the stage, or if I thought that you didn't really have the true heart of worship when you were leading or singing, or if I thought that maybe you were a little bit jealous, or if I thought that you had this flaw or that flaw, I love you and I'm encouraging you. I am strengthening what remains in you. And I am bringing you closer to God because I know that you thrive and you find your destiny. Your destiny is unlocked when you are in covenant relationship with God. And my only purpose is not to come and condemn you and judge you. I'm not coming to condemn you and judge you. I'm coming to draw you into the relationship with God. When you draw near to God, He draws near to you. There's something called the law of attraction. I don't know if you've heard of this. The movie The Secret, I don't know. This is very popular. If any of you are entrepreneurs or creative types, you've probably heard of this concept, the law of attraction. It's very similar to karma. It's very similar to the law of sowing and reaping. And you can take it different ways. But I would say, if you ever meet someone who talks about the law of attraction, or even who talks about karma or something, here's something that you need to know. When you are connected with God, you attract the blessings of God. Come on. You attract the blessings of God. When you're connected with God, when you attract God and you say, I'm drawing near to you, God, I want your presence, you attract everything that comes with God. But what did Jesus say? He said, that with all these blessings come persecution, because we don't live in a perfect world. If we lived in a perfect world, when we attract God, and He comes to us, and we get all the blessings, that would be it. That would be the end of the story. But there's that extra little element that throws a wrench into the deal, which is that also with the blessing comes persecution. So can I judge you and say, oh, you must not be connected with God because you don't have $1 million in your bank account. You should have had that by now. If you really understood the principles of wealth and that God wants to bless you. No, I cannot judge you. I cannot judge you and say that because I have no authority in your life to say that to you. All I can do is encourage you. Say God wants to bless you. There might be attacks coming against you, but God wants to lift you up. All I can do is be an encouragement. All I can do is not judge, but love, love, love. So, how do we unlock our greatest destiny? Through covenant. This is why, just to touch on what Pastor Ruth went on a little tangent with the occult, and that I have thought about this quite a lot in the last year or so. I asked God, I said, God, why is the occult so bad? Why is the occult so bad? Okay? Because all that the occult means is to pursue secret hidden knowledge. Secret hidden knowledge. And I'm like, well, I was a research scientist before. Like, what do scientists do? Scientists look for secret hidden knowledge about the workings of physics and about the universe. Like, isn't that what they do? Like, they look for, what does a mathematician do? They search for the secret hidden knowledge of mathematics, right? What do people do? Anybody who studies the nature of the universe, they're looking for the secret hidden knowledge, right? And I said, God, like, what's different? What's different? What's different between searching out the hidden secret knowledge of the universe and seeking out the secret hidden knowledge that are, like, spiritual in nature? And I felt like the answer was so simple that I almost have to ponder this for years and years to really absorb it. But the answer is that when you are seeking the natures, the secrets in the universe, you're seeking those treasures that I have set aside for you to discover. When you're seeking out the secrets of the spiritual realm, and you're not coming to me, that means someone's feeding you information and it's not from me. That's why you should not be looking to the occult. It has nothing to do with, oh, like, that's bad, like, we shouldn't be doing that. It's because there's a certain domain that God has sort of set for us to discover. He set it apart, like, here's something for you to find, here's something for you to discover. And the way that He's given us that pathway to the supernatural is through Him, through that relationship with Him. And when you have that relationship with Him, that's when all the promises are unlocked. That's when you begin to see the people are healed, the blind eyes are healed, the deaf ears are healed. That's when you begin to see the dead raised, and that's when you begin to see your finances turn around, and that's when you begin to see the blessings of God, because you're connected with Him in a covenant relationship. If instead you are looking into the spiritual realm and you're saying, oh, like, I can, travel over here and capture these spiritual things and bring them back and use them in these ways. And oh, like, I don't like this person at work, so I'm going to, project this thing onto them. And oh, like, and I don't want to, and I don't even want to give anybody ideas. But if you're thinking in those terms, what's happening except that you are now opening yourself up to come under the bondage of the ones who would be carrying those things out, those desires out. And who's carrying those desires out? Not God. Demonic spirits, other spirits. There's all sorts of topics here. But there are things that are there for you to discover in God. And it's not to scare you, it's not to say, this is horrible. It's like, no. It's because God made a covenant. He started a covenant. It all comes back to covenant. God's made lots of covenants. He's made lots of promises. He said, this is how things are. And when He says, if you do this, things will happen for you. You will be blessed. You will have all these promises. When you don't do this, this is when you have all the curses. It's not because He's upset at you if you don't do it. That's not the root reason. The root reason is because it's like if you're playing in your lawn and He said, don't go to the thorn bushes. And if you go to the thorn bushes, you're going to have thorns in your feet or whatever. It's not a punishment. He's just saying, look at the reality of what I've created. I've created something This is the way it goes, and I don't want to see you hurt, so don't go over there, okay? This is what it is, and I think that, as history unfolds, as the future unfolds, I think that God even expands and changes territories. Like, I think that He lifts barriers, and He, as we grow in our relationship with Him, even going back to the knowledge of the good and evil, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that Adam and Eve ate. I felt like when I was asking God about this, like, was the knowledge of good and evil, was that bad? I mean, God had that, right? And I felt like God just said, it wasn't bad, but it was out of my timing. I had this saved for when they were ready, but they weren't ready. They sought it apart from me. And because they sought it apart from me, then they were coming under bondage from the one who deceived them into taking that. Because he wanted them, the fallen angel, Lucifer, wanted them to fall in the same way that he did, which was he wanted to be like God. And he said, you can be like God if you're like this. And he wanted them to break that covenant relationship with God and go on their own and say, I can do this on my own. And I felt like, okay, there are lots of things that we don't understand about the world, okay? There are lots of things we don't understand, but one thing we can understand is that God is motivated by love. He's motivated by love. He's not motivated by, anger, or like, I'm upset at you, or I'm just this harsh person, I just set up these unfair rules. And no. He is motivated by love, and he loves you. He wants to draw you in. He wants to draw you into covenant. He wants to draw you in to the source of life, the vine, that you are the branches, that you can become, you can gain that life from him. If you can flourish, you can bloom, and you can produce fruit. And this is how God made it. This is the original picture. It is supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be effortless. And you're supposed to come into who you were made to be easily. And you're supposed to, wealth is supposed to multiply upon the earth. And things are supposed to flourish. And things are supposed to be so happy. But everything just gets destroyed and ruined when we try to go off on our own and just do things our own way. And we get out of covenant and we just do all these other things. It's like if we come back into covenant, that is when things become clear. That is when things become purified. That is when things become blessing and filled with life and filled with abundance and filled with everything that the good things that God wanted to put into your life. And so the last thing that I leave with you is that God wants you to be in covenant because he loves you. He knows that this is the best for you. I can't think of any other religion that has a covenant-making God. Buddha never made a covenant with people. He never said, if you follow these things, then the blessings of Buddha will follow you. He never said that because, according to the Buddhist tradition, Buddha was never anything greater than we were. He just was further on the evolutionary advancement scale. So he couldn't provide anything for us. As far as I know, there's no other religion that has any concept of a God at the foundation who's a God of love, who made a promise. He made a promise. Before you were even formed, before you even were on the earth, he had a promise. And he had a promise not to harm you, but to allow you to flourish and to prosper. So that you can be happy and full of joy and to live life and enjoy life the way that he wanted it on the earth that he said was good. And so that's what we look forward to. And in the meantime, things might be hard, things might be confusing. We might not have all the confirmation from our GPS every moment that we're on track. Yes, okay, guys, this is going to happen. And there might be attacks from the enemy that are making us think, I'm off track, I missed it. But just know this. Even in the midst of that, you are in a relationship with a covenant God who has promises for you. And those promises for you are things that he planned before you existed. He wanted those things for you more than you do. You don't even know all the things. It's like Gideon was saying, I'm the weakest one in my family, the weakest tribe. How could you ever use me, God? And God says, no, you are my man. I'm going to lead an army through you. It's not really on us. God was the one who made us. God was the one who made the promise. And that is why we can rest assured that we're not missing it, we're not off, we're not, despised by God. God's not angry. He is just shaping us, forming us, bringing us into our greatest form so He can use us to bless the earth, bless the nations through us, because we're the seed of Abraham. Thank you, Pastor Ruth. We are the seed of Abraham, and through the earth, the nation will be blessed. All throughout the earth, the nations will be blessed because of the people of God, because of those covenant people of God. We're in the covenant relationship with God, who have the blessings of God because they're in covenant relationship with God. So let's just pray.
Thank you, God.
Dear God, we thank you so much that you are a covenant God. You have made covenants with people on the earth before you even thought of me or thought of anyone here. You already had this plan, you had this desire. It was a desire for goodness. It was a desire for blessing, for abundance. It was a desire for joy, for peace. All the fruit of the Spirit reveal your heart. They reveal who you are. And it's because of the Spirit, God, that you're empowered to live the life that you want us to live through the grace of Jesus Christ, that you have released, the sacrifice that He made, so that we can be unified with you and live out a covenant relationship with you, God. That we can find healing, restoration, and and have our destiny unfolded before us because of your grace, God, not because of our superior evolution and progress, but because of your amazing grace and the way that you empower us and your promises, God. It's your promise, your plan that's unfolding on the earth. And may we just simply realize that we need to be in covenant relationship with you. Our only job is to abide in you, and you do the rest, God. You give us the ideas. You empower us. You are the one who provides healing. You are the one who directs our steps, God. You are the one that we can rely on. You are faithful. You are trustworthy. And so we just give that to you, God. Give all of our worries, all of our anxieties, all of our doubts, all of our concerns, God, give them to you, God. Just give them to you and we say, we're sorry for doubting you, God. God, bring into our lives other covenant people who can encourage us to stay on the tried and true path so that we don't take exits early, so that we don't miss out on the things that are ahead and take a rough road to where you want us to go, but instead that we take the smooth and straight path straight into our purposes, God, that we wouldn't be sidetracked by the enemy, that we would be sturdy, steadfast, true, and pure to you, and in that covenant bond with you, so that you are reflected in our lives, God. May it be, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.